Hello guys, Henry here with a rundown of the Blender files for Europe Asunder 3 Late Napoleonics. In this video I'm going to both explain what the Blender files are and show how to use them, including converting between Blender files, like copying some parts from another one and producing a final figure. What I appreciate that many of you have probably purchased or backed my Blender files in the past. At least to begin with, I'm going to talk like you have zero familiarity, just for any new people. So, first of all, what is Blender? Blender is a free piece of 3D editing software. It is what I use to produce the miniatures. In fact, the Blender files that I offer are versions of the files that I use to create the miniatures themselves. I say versions because I clean them up. Originally they start life as working files, and actually what you see in front of you here is my working file for Europe Asunder 3. So just as a quick caveat, you're going to see some janky behavior. Some of the stuff in the overview here is going to be messed up a bit, and it's not reflective of what you'll get at the end, but everything I show to you will include stuff that you'll have access to, and you know, I'll add caveats. I'll explain if something's a bit funny or different from what you can expect. So, in front of us we obviously have our figure. He's configured, hopefully correctly, to be a Russian musketeer. Shouldn't have the plume, I guess, if he's a musketeer. But we'll leave that there for now. On the right here, we have what's called the overview. At least that's what I call it. I think that's the correct name. And the overview is divided into a series of folders. You're going to see why for that in a second. Because when you edit a model in Blender, well, the really useful thing about it is that it's still divided into its constituent parts, which you can see when I click on something it's highlighted in yellow. So all these bits of the model are separate. Now the fun thing about that is it means you can grab them, you can move them, you can scale them. Sorry, this has a locked axis, but you can scale them. So if you were getting really pedantic with details, you know, you could make little sub-variations to all your musketeers and how they're holding their muskets, just to bring some more life. You can rotate heads. Just take care to make sure I click every part of the head. Yeah, you can rotate. Oh, you can rotate the heads. I'll call the knapsack there. Rotate heads around like this. The cord here is obviously a problem, but I'm going to show you a way around that. How I've made it a bit easier for you. So there's lots of conversion potential. If you don't like the proportions of the models, you can scale the legs. So like if I moved this base down, I could scale the leg like that, and suddenly I have a taller, leaner figure. But obviously that's getting really into details with things and requires, you know, some skill. I appreciate that if you're a complete newcomer, you have no idea of like what key combinations I'm using or anything. So let's take it back to basics, to be really simple, and how I've tried to make the file as user-friendly as possible. And how I've done that, like I mentioned, is these folders on the right. Now next to these folders you'll notice little white eyeballs. If I click one of those eyeballs, it's a toggle. So this is just heads, so the default head toggles off. If I click an arrow next to a folder, I drop it down, I expand it. So inside the head folders you can see that, for example, we got facial hair. I could have him be clean shaven by hiding the moustache. I could add in the thick moustache. I've even got a beard here, which I guess will be used more for peasants and Cossacks, but yeah. You got moustache, different hairstyles. There is some stuff here that will not be in the file exporter. For example, anything French obviously won't be there. This file started as a branch of the Waterloo Blender file, so I've got all the Waterloo content in here in addition to Europe Asunder 3. Again, I'll give disclaimers where you see something that you won't be getting. But let's look inside the Russian hat. So again, I'm clicking to open up the Russian folder. We've got our 1812 keyword here, and I can get really pedantic with the details if I want to. If I click this grenadier toggle, adds the little grenadier tabs to the, it's not really a plate, the badge, Shako badge I guess you'd call it. If I toggle these off, I can swap it for artillery. Or I can put in the Hussar cockadey thing. And then I've got two choices here of, I've called it a cockade, I'm not sure if that's the right name, but there's a circular one and an ovular one. Because believe it or not, they changed this. It's why I love Napoleonics. The uniforms, every year they change something tiny. Sorry, too much pain in my voice there, I think. I can get rid of the keyword and swap it out for the Russian cavalry helmet. You can see some rough stuff here, like original's first attempt. Obviously ignore that, but Here's a Russian cavalry helmet. And if I'm getting really adventurous and I want to do some mad conversions, we could toggle off the headwear. And if I Alt-Tab to another Blender file, this is Europe Asunder 2, the core Blender file for Europe Asunder 2. If I just hide this head, I'm clicking and pressing H to hide. If I press Control-C with this stuff selected, tab to the other Blender file, and just like you would in like a Word document or something, press Control-V, voila! All my Blender files are designed so that they're compatible, because all of the different objects that exist between them, like common objects, like heads for example, occupy the same like physical space. So if you paste a hat between both files, it appears in the right place. So if we want to make a nonsensical character, we can do that if we want, but with a Russian cavalry helmet like this, the interesting application is that someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the only visual difference between the earlier like Austerlitz era Russian cavalry and what I've got here for the 1812 stuff is the heads. So if you just swap the heads around, you can produce some Austerlitz cavalry up to the new sculpting standard and style, because there is a difference in quality between my older work and my new work, simply because hopefully over time I've got better at my job. That's what we hope for anyway. Anyway, conversions will come at the end. We're going to export a custom character. Let's just keep exploring the Blender file. So if I toggle off the Russian folder, we can look at different nationalities. In this case, let's go to the German allies. Here we have a Bavarian Raupenhelm. Officer's crest is on by default. You can see that. If I click an object, you see it gets highlighted where it is on the overview. If I tick that off, I can swap it with the standard crest for like a Bavarian ranker. We've got a bell shako, which should work, I think, both for, well, certainly for Württembergers, that's what I've used it for, but I think it will also work for Austrians. It's got an optional back brim you can put on and off, because some units had them, some units didn't. We've got two choices of plate, diamond plate here, and then this one, which I need to clean up. I noticed this earlier. I think it needs to be moved and the chords adjusted a bit. Little kinks like that will be done before the final version comes into your hands. From the time of recording, it's 1 day before the Kickstarter launch. There will be 1 month before the files are delivered. 2-week funding window, plus it takes 2 weeks for Kickstarter to do all the funds, like collect the funds for 1 week and then 1 week for them to get to me. So delivery will be about 1 month from today, roughly. So lots of time to fix stuff up. And you can always ask past backers of my work how reliably I get things released and fixed. Hopefully they'll tell you very well, but we don't know. I don't know what they'll say. Here is a Württemberg Ranker's Raupenhelm Grenadier headdress, which you'll have seen on the 808 Grenadier figures. We have some lovely painted examples by Rob Dunlop and James Tozer all over the Facebook page. And the Jaeger stovepipe style shako. We've got different choices of collar. And I promise I'll keep this video more engaging than me just dryly walking through every bloomin' toggle we've got in the whole thing. In fact, let's move on a little bit. Last thing to show you with the head section is we mentioned earlier that the Kiva chords could crop. You have problems here. Like that way's not so bad, but this way you'd get cropping. I've tried to help by creating pre-posed versions at common angles you're going to use. So 13 degrees looking left here with the chord properly adjusted. And this way you can have your units with their little variations, guys looking in different directions. Again, some of our Danish customers, I know, get very particular. They do all the little variations in musket angling on each figure just to make the units look a bit more alive. Madness, says I. Anyway, beneath that we've got legs. Different leg choices. These are the Russian flared overalls, I've called them. Not sure if that's the correct name, but that's what I've called them. And we've got different types of gaiter as well. Some of this is content from Waterloo. I think I'll make most of it available to you anyway. It's stuff that's specific to the Waterloo nations that won't be included. These are new short gaiters I've done for the German states. And yeah, let's put that back to the flared overalls. The legs are in different positions. We've got marching. We've got standing, like a boring standing pose. Firing legs, for if you want a guy who's doing a power pose, like maybe he's thrusting his groin towards the enemy, I don't know. Kneeling firing legs, obviously to go with kneeling firing poses. Normal kneeling, like kneeling forward legs. Advancing legs. Again, if you don't like the proportions of these, I know some people don't, you can just scale them. What I'm doing here is I'm pressing the S key to scale, and then I'm pressing Z to lock it to the Z axis. It's that simple. And to move things, I've got Blender tutorials, just look at the other videos on my channel, but to move things, click something, press G, move your mouse around. If you press Z, X, or Y, you lock it to an axis. So this isn't very hard. It's very easy to adjust legs. So if you want to make your guys like Warlord Epic compatible, that's a way to do it. Oh, and we've got mounted legs for Gangnam style miniatures there. Was that a dated reference? Probably a dated reference, but I've never pretended to be current. Down here we have our pose list. Poses are divided into different folders like line, action, artillery, command, and mounted. Line poses start off with just a whole bunch of different marching positions, again to add some variety, some life to your units. You have a choice between a Charleville musket, a Brown Bess musket, and a Baker rifle for your armament options. And you've got lots of different coats. Now, for this Kickstarter, I've been mostly working with 3 coats. The other coats here are Waterloo ones. I will only remove coats that aren't used for any of the nations involved in the Kickstarter. I'm waiting to see what stretch goals fund. But yeah, don't expect your Barden coats. Barden coats come in the Waterloo files. As for the coats I have been working with, we've got the double-breasted short coat, which is what I also used for the Prussians. It's just the same cut of coat. Prussians look very similar to Russians in a lot of respects. I guess they realised, well, we basically have the same name, so why look distinct, eh? Someone's going to murder me for saying that one. Lots of differences between Prussians and Russians, Henry. Yes, there are, but, you know, the coats are pretty similar to me. Here is the collet, which is what I've used for the Germans. To get the Germans right, you'll need to hide the normal double buttons and look for plastrons. These are a bit disorganized at the moment. Again, work in progress file, but these plastrons are for the Bavarians. There are some extra buttons somewhere, and you've also got my older plastrons, which just tuck in. I realized the Bavarian ones, proportionally, like on a standing guy, they just look a bit longer, so I've done them some unique ones. I'm not sure where the extra buttons are. I will quality check all this before it goes out, don't worry. Okay. So if you're using a collet, you'll want that. And the other one, the other coat is the Liebrock, but that's just on officers, so it's not rigged to this pose. Again, I've promised I'm not going to just dryly show you everything, but we're going to go through here. Some of these poses will be missing, just the French-specific ones. French-specific being Eagle Guard, Fanion Bearer, and the Pioneer/Sapper. Everything else you can expect. So you've got a playing drummer, an idle drummer, playing fifer, idle fifer, funnily enough, and a bugle pose. You need to rotate the head 30 degrees to match that one. Standard bearer with toggleable flagpole. You can also, by the way, I forgot to mention it, you can change out cuffs. These are Württemberg cuffs, Bavarian cuffs, French-Russian cuffs, like so. Different NCO poses. NCO weapon is a musket or a rifle on the right shoulder, and then half pike here. Whether this one gets included will depend on if any of the nations in the stretches use them. I'm not sure about that yet. And we've got an officer marching with sword, and then a new pose. This is new for this Kickstarter. It's not in the Waterloo files. We've got an officer with a raised sword. So the idea is that you would find the shouting head. Where is it? European head. Okay. The shouting head will be in here. That's something I need to add. And we'd rotate him like over here, like rah, 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 shouting, looking off heroically as he leads his men forward, right? Okay, that's all the line poses. Action poses are your shooting, loading, standing ready poses. Like if you want to do guys in a square formation, you're going to want ready one, which was, sorry, we had 2 poses on, so that's standing firing. Turn off the line poses as well. So standing firing and ready one. And if we look from the side, you can see the difference. Frick. Ready 2. Ready 1. Ready 2. And advancing, where it's even lower. Guess you could do advancing with standing legs if the mood took you. And you've also got artillery, command, pointing. That's a nice imaginative command pose, right? And then your mounted poses. We'll look at those in more detail now. Let's turn off our standing legs, go to mounted legs. Again, sorry, this is a working file. There is a bit of litter about the place. It will be tidied up. As things stand, because the Kickstarter hasn't launched, we haven't had any further content, like the stretch content we haven't looked at yet, so there will be potentially more stuff, hopefully more stuff, but at the moment the only country I've done cavalry for as part of this project are the Russians, which is why mounted poses, we've got cavalry specific equipment at the top. All this stuff is Russian. So here we've got pistol covers. That should be aligned a bit better. But we've got pistol covers, and then if I hide this you'll see them better. We've got officer pistol covers. Let's fix that now. So let's have that match with that, and then with this one, like so. Obviously you can make little fixes like this if you figure out how. You're welcome to. You shouldn't have to. I won't have anything blatantly broken, and if anything is broken, let me know and I'll fix it. We've got some feed pouches there. We can hide them. And here we have a sabretache. Toggles like so. Obviously you would hide the foot saber. There are toggles for that further down, but it's a bit messy. I'm just showing you the bits very briefly. We've got carbines with different orientations for hanging, and there's a Paget carbine there. For the Russian cavalry, I've actually exported them without carbines, but I have carbines as a separate STL, simply because fewer than most actually carried a carbine. Anyway, different scabbards. We have 2 enabled there. So there's a straight scabbard, curved scabbard, and a straight cuirassier scabbard. I hope I pronounced that right. Down here we have horses. So these are new trotting poses. These were actually made for the AWI project, but they're newer than the ones in the Waterloo file. They just have more realistic trotting poses. The galloping poses are still the same. Galloping is down here. Oh, and you have separate heads for the horses like this. That's why that one had no head. It's the same for the trotting ones. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, like so. Right. Hopefully that's enough of the poses. That explains how the toggles work. Let's, as our last part before we export a figure, look at the national and shared parts. So shared parts, plastrons like we showed before, all your different sort of sabers. This is all Waterloo stuff, so actually I shouldn't be toggling that on. Let's look at the stuff specific to this. For the Russians, they got sabers down here. We got a Russian saber, and we got a Jaeger sword bayonet. I think that's the Palash. Yeah, this is a Palash with its own bayonet next to it. So for any of your Jaegers that have rifles, they'll be carrying these. Your Jaegers with muskets, I believe, just carry the normal saber scabbards. Russians have got standard knapsack, and then this one for musicians that's worn differently because Napoleonics never make things simple. But hopefully this shows that I do, where I'm aware of the facts, I do try to go into pedantic levels of detail. Speaking of pedantic levels of detail, look at your cartridge box. You've got line badge, grenadier badge, artillery badge, and then you've got a completely separate cartridge box for cavalry as well. That's the dragoon one and the cuirassier one. Different cut altogether. Oh, I hope I don't sound too tired, guys, but it has been an intensive couple of months cranking all this out, I tell you. Might take a nice rest on the launch day. It'll be very nice to get this out. Other stuff, under French allies, that's where you'll find your German stuff. They've got their common French equipment, which I won't be deleting because, you know, that's useful. This is the Württemberger knapsack, which is a bit like wider from what I can see, looking proportionally. And your French knapsacks like this. French cartridge box. Then you've got your Bavarian bits, your Württemberger bits. And at the top, because I forgot about it, we've got sword belts, which include like dismounted cavalry sword belts. And then one more at the side. Where is the scabbard? It's under officer parts, is it? Scabbard. You can search stuff up here. Officer parts, there it is, yes. Officer parts has different sashes. Again, this is like the plastron, something I need to better organise, because different nations have different sorts of sash configurations. I could see we've got, yeah, like this Austrian style one here. And then I also saw versions that are like tied from the back like that. Obviously, if you have an officer, unless he's Russian, he's not going to have a knapsack on, so you'll see all this a bit better. Yeah. Right, that's enough rambling. Well, let's talk about how to actually export things, shall we? So, I'm going to run with my imagination a bit here. And I'm going to do something that isn't just a Russian musketeer. Let's see if the plastron's on, even with the incorrect buttons. And let's hide the hat. Let's take a hat from another file, like I said we would. Oh, no, hide just the hats. Okay, let's get up a marching pose again. He's got his Russian cuffs on. Let's give him Bavarian cuffs. And again, you don't have to be mad like me and just do a made-up thing. You can use these to do historical units. I mean, like, all the time I get asked, like, are you going to do this particular guard unit, or this obscure militia, or landwehr, or this tiny city-states army, or something like that? And unfortunately, my time is so invested across multiple periods and commitments at the moment that there's a lot of stuff that will never be feasible for me to get around to, or if I do, it'll be very far off in the future. And so Blender files, from my perspective, are a bit like, teach a man to fish. Like, if you are particularly passionate about something and you want something in particular, kit bash it. Digital kit bashing. Wonderful thing. Let's go in the Europe Asunder 1 file. Let's take a cocked hat. No, actually, let's be weirder. Take a mitre. Let's take a... What we got here? Russian Fusilier mitre. Okay. Stick that on this guy. If I click somewhere in the overview, that's the folder it'll get pasted to. So I'm just putting this in the overview. So there, now he's got a mitre on. He's got a collet with plastrons. Hasn't got a cartridge box. Give him that. I appreciate I've waffled on long enough, so I shan't waste too much more of your time. Okay, he's got a French cartridge box because with a Württemberger badge on it. Real weirdo. And let's give him Hussar boots, because I like my guys to look pimpin'. Where are the Hussars? Here we go. Plain overalls with Hussar boots. There we go! Isn't that just snazzy? And since these buttons are missing at the moment, we'll give him a sash. That's too much stuff that's toggled on. Just hide all this. Hide that, hide the sword. If you're in a hurry and you can't find the folder for something, just click it and hide. He hasn't got a bayonet. And he hasn't got a saber either. There we go. That's enough. For a bare minimum to get to combat, hide that so it looks better. Okay, if you want to export a figure, click something, press A to select all, click File, click Export, click STL. I shall send this to my desktop. I shall call him Nonsensical Figure. Apologies for the profanity. That's an anime figure my girlfriend wants me to print for her friend. I'm not a fan of anime, so I gave it a condescending name. I apologise to any anime fans in the audience. Right, so what have I just done? I've named the figure, Nonsensical Figure. The really important bit, sorry, I did that without announcing what I was doing, thinking. If you want to export something at the same scale as the other inches, type 1.165 here in scale. And most importantly, because 99.9% of the messages I get from people who say, the Blender file doesn't work, it's because they missed this step. When you're on this export window, click Selection Only, and that way you'll only export what is visible on the screen. If you tick this off, you export every single object in the file. So, click this, click Export. Now go to my desktop, and when I double-click this, I've got a program installed called 3D Builder. If I bring up the store. This should be on the Microsoft Store. For some people it isn't, because they seem to be discontinuing it, but you can still Yeah, for me it isn't actually. But you can still find this, if you just Google 3D Builder, you can still download this from Microsoft's site. There are alternatives, but this is what I use as the easiest, most idiot-proof one for now. But anyway, if you open this up in 3D Builder, however you get it, it is Windows only. Apologies. I'll have a link in the description for anyone who's on Apple or Mac for an alternative. But anyway, if you open this up in 3D Builder, make sure millimeter is clicked up here, otherwise it'll be the wrong scale, and click Import Model. And you get this little red box and this dialog telling you to repair the file. Click it, and it'll just automatically repair. And when that finishes, you can close this, click Save, and you will have a new figure that is ready for printing. It's that simple. So you just click X and click Save. Anyway, thank you very much for sticking through this video. I appreciate that I have been warbling on and on and on, so well done to you if you've had the patience to stick through the end. The long and short of it, the use case for Blender is, if you're very elementary in abilities, just starting out, it's got these toggles that are very, I hope, intuitive to use. I've tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. But if you're willing to learn some basic controls, and I've got tutorials on my YouTube channel to help with that, you can do some more advanced stuff with it, including kit bashing, as I've just shown here. But the purpose is that if you're particular about something with the miniatures, like there's some kind of alteration you want to make to proportions, or you want to add a bit more life by having more variation in the poses, or you're just a fan of Herr Nickelschruber's 77th Landwehr Land Dragoons, who famously participated in the skirmish at Mrs. Miggins' cowshed, and you are incensed that I haven't modelled that yet, you can do it yourself. Sorry, I've joked in the past that the reason I made Blender files was just to have that comeback, to stop people asking me to make things that I knew I would never have time to get around to. And yeah, I guess there's some truth in that. Sorry. This one's finished, so I just click X and click Save. Anyway, yep, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you'll consider backing the Kickstarter, and if you're so inclined and would like to go above and beyond, you can get more than just the STLs by backing the Blender files. That'll get you the STLs and this file that will give you full access to all the constituent parts of my models to alter them to your heart's content. Thank you very much, take care, and happy hobbying.